The billionaire stood frozen on the marble steps of his estate, watching 6 trembling puppies huddle in the rain, their small bodies shaking, their eyes empty of trust, and for the first time in his life, no amount of money could make them move. Adrian Cross had built empires out of silence. Boardrooms obeyed his gaze. Markets bent when he spoke. Yet on this cold morning, with helicopters grounded and assistants whispering behind him, he felt powerless. The puppies, rare, specially bred, gifted from a foreign dignitary, had arrived after a fire at the breeder's compound. Since then, they wouldn't eat properly, wouldn't respond to trainers, wouldn't even lift their heads when called. That said, there was nothing physically wrong. Behavioral experts tried routines, music, toys, even scent therapy. Nothing worked. The puppies simply waited, as if bracing for something worse. Adrian hated waiting. He'd grown up poor, learned early that hesitation cost you everything. He bought solutions, not hope. But now, the problem stared back at him with wide, wounded eyes. And something inside him, long buried under contracts and steel, ached. That was when he noticed the man by the gate. He didn't look like the others. No clipboard. No suit. No eagerness. Just a stillness that didn't belong to employees. The man stood with hands relaxed at his sides, posture easy but alert, like someone who knew storms intimately and didn't flinch at their arrival. "Who is that?" Adrian asked. "Name's Luke Hale," an assistant replied. "Former Navy SEAL. Works security for the neighbor's ranch." He asked if he could watch. Adrian scoffed. "Watch what? Puppies?" Luke didn't answer from the gate. He didn't approach. He just waited, eyes not on Adrian, but on the puppies, specifically, on the smallest one pressed into the center, ears flat, breast shallow. Luke saw fear. Not chaos. Not stubbornness. Fear. And fear, he knew, followed rules. When Adrian finally waved him in, out of frustration more than curiosity, Luke walked slowly across the grass, each step deliberate. He stopped 10 feet away from the puppies and did something no one expected. He sat down. Not near them. Not looming. He sat with his back to them. The trainers protested. Adrian raised a hand to silence them. Luke closed his eyes. He slowed his breathing. In. Out. Long. Even. The kind of breathing learned in deserts and jungles, when panic could kill you faster than bullets. Minutes passed. Rain softened. And then, something unbelievable happened. One puppy lifted its head. Luke didn't move. Another puppy inched forward, curious despite itself. Still, Luke did nothing. Adrian felt his chest tighten. "What is he doing?" he whispered. Luke opened his mouth and began to hum. It wasn't a tune anyone recognized. Low. Steady. Almost like a heartbeat made audible. A sound meant not to command, but to promise. The smallest puppy stepped forward. Then another. Luke kept humming, eyes still closed, back still turned. And for the first time since the fire, a puppy wagged its tail. Adrian's breath caught in his throat. But this was only the beginning. Because what Luke was really doing, what no one yet understood, had nothing to do with puppies. It had everything to do with broken trust, and a promise made long ago in a war zone, to something small, terrified, and alone. And Luke was about to keep that promise again. The billionaire thought he was witnessing a miracle, until he realized the miracle wasn't the puppies. It was the man. Luke Hale stayed on the ground for nearly an hour, never turning around. The puppies circled him like cautious satellites, drawn by the steady hum, the calm breathing, the absence of threat. When one finally pressed its nose against his back, Luke didn't flinch. Only then did he speak. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm not going anywhere." The words hit Adrian harder than he expected. Because Adrian Cross had built his life on leaving first. Luke eventually stood, slow and careful, letting the puppies retreat if they needed to. But they didn't. They followed him. That afternoon, Luke told Adrian the truth. Years ago, during a mission overseas, Luke's unit had found a bombed-out village. In the rubble, they heard whimpering. Not a child. Puppies. Their mother lay dead nearby. The team wanted to move on. Orders were orders. But Luke couldn't. He stayed behind just long enough to calm them, to guide them into a safer place, humming the same low tune while gunfire echoed in the distance. He'd been injured minutes later. Evacuated. He never knew if those puppies survived. I learned something that day, Luke said, his voice steady but eyes distant. Fear doesn't respond to force. It responds to safety. The billionaire, who had forced the world to bend for him, felt something crack. Over the next days, Luke returned. He never took payment. He taught the staff not commands but patience. He showed them how to sit on the ground, how to breathe, how to let silence work instead of noise. The puppies began to eat, then to play, then to sleep without trembling. But the real change came when Adrian joined them. At first, he stood awkwardly, unsure how to lower himself to the grass without dignity. Luke didn't instruct him. He simply sat down himself. Adrian followed. For the first time in decades, the billionaire sat on the ground and did nothing. No calls. No decisions. Just breath. One puppy climbed into his lap. Adrian felt tears rise, and didn't fight them. He remembered his own childhood fear. The nights waiting for a father who never came home. The silence that taught him never to need. In the weeks that followed, Adrian did something no one expected. He built a foundation, not for profit, not for legacy, but for healing traumatized animals and veterans together. He asked Luke to run it. Luke agreed on one condition. No titles, he said. Just work. On opening day, the puppies, now stronger, brighter, ran freely across the fields, weaving between veterans who sat quietly, humming, breathing, learning to trust again. Adrian watched from the porch, a different man than the one who had stood frozen on those steps weeks earlier. Money had built the estate, but presence had built the healing. As the sun dipped low, Luke sat among the dogs, the same hum drifting into the evening air. One of the puppies curled beside him, safe at last. And Adrian finally understood the truth that had eluded him his entire life. Some wounds don't need power. They need patience. Some lives aren't changed by being saved. They're changed by being seen. And sometimes, the most unbelievable thing a person can do is simply stay.